I've worked overnight security at Cartwell's Supercenter for almost 3 years now, and I want to say up front, I'm not a nervous person. I did 2 years in the army before this, spent one of them outside Kandahar. I've had guns pointed at me. I've sat with dying men. I don't scare easy and I don't tell stories to get attention. But I need to tell you about aisle 13. Because on my first night at Cartwell's, the store manager didn't hand me a radio first, or a flashlight or a name badge. He handed me a single brass key on a red rubber fob, and he told me it wasn't for the front doors. It wasn't for the cash office or the pharmacy cage or the loading dock. It was for a chain. A steel chain, padlocked at both ends, stretched across the mouth of aisle 13. Then he gave me one instruction and he said it slow like he wanted to make sure it stuck. If that chain is ever on the floor when you find it, he said, don't put it back. I asked him what I was supposed to do instead. He looked at me for a long second before he answered, run. That was it. That was the whole training. And for the first 2 weeks, I thought it was just Walmart-style corporate paranoia dressed up as a spooky story to keep new hires from slacking off. I want you to understand that. I want you to understand how normal everything else about this job is, because that's what makes what happened to me so hard to explain. This wasn't a haunted house. This was a superstore with fluorescent lighting and a seasonal aisle and a guy in the deli who microwaves burritos at 2 a.m. And somewhere inside all that ordinary, there was something that had been there since before the building had a roof. My name's Danny Okafor. I'm 29. I took the overnight security job at Cartwell's because I'd just gotten out of a lease I couldn't afford, my car needed a transmission I couldn't afford either, and a buddy of mine from my old unit, Terrence, told me Cartwell's paid $2 over minimum for the graveyard shift because nobody wanted it. 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. for nights a week, benefits after 90 days. I needed it bad enough that I didn't ask a lot of questions in the interview. I should have. The store itself is nothing special. It sits off Route 9, one of those big beige boxes with a parking lot the size of a small airport, built back in the mid-90s during that wave when every town in America got one. Groceries on one side, general merchandise on the other, a garden center out back that gets locked up separate from the main building. 24 aisles, not counting produce and the pharmacy. The overnight shift isn't what people think. People picture shoplifters, maybe a fight in the parking lot, teenagers doing something stupid by the bike racks. And sure, that happens. We get homeless folks trying to sleep in the patio furniture display in the garden center. I always just wake them gentle and walk them to the door because it's not like anybody's paying me enough to be cruel about it. We get drunk guys wandering in at midnight looking for a specific brand of chips like their life depends on it. But mostly the overnight shift is quiet. Really quiet. The kind of quiet that has its own sound, the hum of the refrigerated cases in the frozen aisle, low and constant like the building is breathing. The floor buffer machine that Miguel runs on Tuesdays and Thursdays, squealing across the tile in slow figure eights. The loudspeaker that occasionally clicks on with nothing behind it, just a burst of static, a click, then silence again like someone in the back office bumped the intercom button by accident. My job is simple on paper. Walk the floor every hour. Check the doors. Watch the cameras in the security office, which is a windowless room behind receiving with 6 monitors and a chair that's been broken in the same spot for probably a decade. Handle anything that needs handling. Write an incident report if something happens, which it usually doesn't. I liked it, honestly. There's something peaceful about having an entire store to yourself. Walking down the cereal aisle at 2 a.m. with nobody else in the building except Miguel on cleaning nights and maybe one overnight stocker restocking dairy. You get used to the sound of your own footsteps. You get used to the particular way the lights hum, the particular smell of the bakery section going cold overnight, bread and nothing, a smell that's somehow both warm and completely dead at the same time. I got good at the small rhythms fast. Receiving comes alive around 1 a.m. most nights, a truck backing up to the dock with a long beeping wail, and I'd sign for it, walk the driver through where to stage the pallets, then leave them to it while I did my rounds. The overnight stocker, a rotating cast of 2 or 3 guys, mostly college kids working around class schedules, would run dairy and bread while I checked doors. Around 4 a.m., the store goes into what I started thinking of as its deepest quiet, The stretch where even the compressor hum in frozen food seems to drop a register, like the whole building's holding its breath before the day shift starts trickling in around 6. I liked the floor buffer nights best, honestly, because Miguel talked while he worked, which meant I got the store's real history instead of the corporate version. He'd been at that Cartwell's almost 11 years, longer than any other employee on payroll, longer even than Russ. He knew which registers stuck, which freezer door needed a shoulder to close all the way, which parking lot light had been out since before he started and never once got fixed despite 3 separate maintenance tickets. He knew the store the way you know a person you've lived with a long time, not with affection exactly, but with a thorough, weary familiarity. Everything about the store made sense to me within the first week. Except one aisle. Aisle 13 sits near the back, between the toy section and the seasonal aisle. Right now in the fall, it's full of Halloween decorations, which I'll admit didn't help my nerves any. Every other aisle in that store is lit the same flat white as every other Cartwell's in America. Aisle 13 isn't. I noticed it my second night walking the floor. The overhead lights are there, same fixtures, same bulbs as far as I could tell. But the aisle always looks a shade darker than it should. Like the light's getting swallowed somewhere before it reaches the floor. Nobody restocks it after midnight. I asked Miguel about that once, casual, while he was running the buffer. He didn't even look up from the machine. Nobody restocks 13 at all, he said. Day shift doesn't touch it either. Corporate sends a truck. I asked what he meant by that. He just shrugged and kept buffing. Ask Russ. Russ Feeney is the overnight store manager. Technically my boss, though he mostly stays in his office doing paperwork and drinking gas station coffee that he refills from a thermos the size of a fire extinguisher. Russ is somewhere in his late 50s, built like a man who used to be strong and is now just solid, with reading glasses he wears low on his nose and a wedding ring he still wears even though, I found out later, his wife passed 6 years ago. He's the kind of guy who remembers your birthday because he wrote it down somewhere, not because he's sentimental about it. Just thorough. On my first night, after he handed me the key and gave me the instruction about the chain, I laughed a little because I thought it was a joke. Some kind of hazing thing they do to new hires. Russ didn't laugh back. I'm not messing with you, Danny, he said. I need you to hear this part clean because I'm only going to say it once and I need it to stick. You do your walk every hour on the hour. When you get to aisle 13, you look at the chain. You don't touch it unless you have to. If it's hanging the way it should be, padlocked, both ends 6 inches off the floor, you keep walking. You don't need to do anything else. And if it's not? That's when he told me. If the chain is ever on the floor, don't put it back. Run. I remember asking him why. I remember him taking his glasses off, cleaning them on his shirt even though they didn't look dirty, and putting them back on before he answered. Because the chain's not there to keep people out of the aisle, he said. It's there so we know if it's ever been let out. I didn't understand what it meant. I still don't, not entirely. But I understood from the way he said it, that I wasn't supposed to ask again that night. So I didn't. I clocked in, walked my first hour, and when I got to aisle 13, the chain was exactly where it should be. Hanging. Padlocked. 6 inches off the floor. I want to be honest with you, for the first 2 weeks, nothing happened. I did my walks. I checked the chain. Aisle 13 stayed dark and quiet and completely ordinary except for the way the light didn't quite sit right in it. I started to relax. I started to think Russ was just an old-school manager who liked his rules dramatic, the same way some managers like their coffee scalding. Then I broke a rule I didn't even know I had. It was my 3rd week when Russ finally laid it all out, and he only did it because of what happened 2 nights before, which I'll get to. He sat me down in the break room, fluorescent lighting, a vending machine that eats your dollar about 1 time in 5, a bulletin board with an OSHA poster nobody's ever read, and he told me there were 3 rules for aisle 13. Not requests. Rules. Rule 1. Never enter the aisle after 3 a.m. Before 3, if you need to grab something off that aisle for a customer, which almost never happens because nobody shops down there overnight, but occasionally someone wants Halloween decorations at midnight, you can go in. Quick, professional, in and out. After 3 a.m. the aisle is closed. Not officially. There's no sign. But you don't go in. Rule 2. If the motion detector on camera 13 activates after hours, you ignore it. Every other motion alert in that store, I'm supposed to investigate. That's literally the job. But camera 13, the one covering aisle 13, is wired differently. If it trips, I log the time in the incident book and I do not walk down there to check it out. Rule 3. If someone asks you where the bathrooms are and you don't recognize them as an employee, don't answer. I remember staring at him when he said that one. It's such a strange, specific thing to be told not to do. Answer a question. Point someone toward the restroom. It's the kind of thing you do on reflex, the kind of basic customer courtesy that's practically muscle memory if you've ever worked retail. Why would I not answer that? I asked. Because there shouldn't be a customer asking, Russ said. Not at that hour. Not near that aisle. If someone's standing near 13 after 3 in the morning asking you where the bathroom is, that's not a customer, Danny. I don't know what it is, but it's not a customer. I asked him, and I remember my voice not sounding as steady as I wanted it to. What happens if I do answer? He didn't have a clean answer for that. He just said the last guy who worked this job, the guy before me, apparently didn't have a policy of ignoring things. And then he changed the subject, and I could tell that was as far as that conversation was going to go that night. The thing that had happened 2 nights before, the reason he finally sat me down, was small. Almost nothing on its face. I was doing my 2 a.m. walk, cutting through the toy aisle toward the back of the store, and aisle 13's overhead light flickered. Just once. A stutter like a power surge. I stopped walking. I looked down the aisle. The chain was still hanging. Still padlocked. Nothing wrong that I could see. But there was a shopping cart at the far end of the aisle, past the chain, sitting crooked against the shelf like someone had abandoned it mid-stock. I hadn't put a cart there. Nobody had been in that aisle all night. I'd have seen them on the walkthrough or on camera. And carts don't get themselves 15 feet past a locked chain barrier. I didn't cross the chain. I want that clear. I stood there for probably a full minute just looking at that cart, feeling the hair go up on my arms in a way I hadn't felt since Kandahar, and then I backed out of the toy aisle and finished my walk somewhere else. I told Russ about it the next morning before I clocked out, and that's what led to the sit-down. He didn't seem surprised. That's what got me. A cart appearing behind a padlocked chain barrier in a section of the store nobody enters, and my boss just nodded like I told him the ice machine was low. That happens sometimes, he said. Things get rearranged back there. Don't worry about the cart. Worry about the chain. Once I knew the rules, I started paying closer attention to the cameras, which is how I found out about the glitch. Cartwell's security office has 6 monitors, cycling through 24 camera feeds, parking lot, entrances, each aisle, the registers, the loading dock, the pharmacy cage. Standard stuff. Grainy black and white, the kind of footage that makes everyone look like a ghost even when they're just an overnight stalker grabbing a soda. Camera 13 covers aisle 13, obviously. And camera 13 loses feed. Not often, maybe 2-3 times a week, but consistently always somewhere between 2 and 4 a.m. and always for the same duration, exactly 40 seconds. Every other camera in the building stays rock solid. Just that one drops to static, comes back, and when it comes back, something's different. The first time I caught it happening live, I was sitting in the security office with a lukewarm coffee, half paying attention, half scrolling my phone. Camera 13 cut to static around 2:40 a.m. I didn't think much of it. Cameras glitch, it's an old building, corporate's never going to spring for a full rewire. 40 seconds later, the feed snapped back. The shelf on the left side of the aisle, the Halloween section, had changed. Not dramatically. A row of decorative skulls that had been stacked in a pyramid was now scattered, a couple of them on the floor. A display of orange string lights that had been coiled on an end cap was now unspooled, trailing halfway down the aisle like something had dragged it. No person in frame. Not before the glitch, not after. I checked the footage 3 times, frame by frame, and there was nothing. No shadow, no movement, no blur that would suggest someone stepping out of frame fast. Just intact, static, disturbed. I started keeping my own log after that, separate from the official incident book, because I wanted to see if there was a pattern. There was, sort of. Every time camera 13 glitched, something moved. Never anything huge. A cart shifted. A shelf item knocked down. Once, an entire cardboard display of plastic pumpkins that had been standing upright was found lying flat, undamaged, like someone had set it down gently instead of knocking it over. And every single time when I did the morning inventory count with Russ, because by week 4 he'd started having me help with that too, which I now understand wasn't a coincidence, exactly one item was missing from aisle 13. Never the same item twice. A bag of fun-sized candy one week, a single decorative crow the next, a pack of glow sticks, small things, cheap things, the kind of shrinkage any store writes off without blinking. Except Russ didn't write it off. He counted it every morning on a separate sheet he kept in a locked drawer in his desk, not the regular inventory sheet, a different one, handwritten, going back further than 3 years. I only saw it once by accident when he left the drawer open while taking a call. Pages and pages of it. Dates. Single items. Going back, from what I could tell glancing at the ink fading toward the back pages, well over a decade. There was one more thing I noticed about camera 13 that I didn't understand until much later. The timestamp in the corner of the feed, the little digital readout every security camera has, would sometimes lag during the glitch. Not freeze exactly. Just slow down so that 40 real seconds of static would only log as 28 or 30 seconds on the recording, like whatever was interfering with the feed was interfering with more than just the picture. I mentioned it to a delivery driver once, mostly just making conversation while he waited on a signature. His name was Otis, a big quiet man who'd been running the overnight route to that Cartwell's for going on 6 years, hauling in the same kind of pallets 3 nights a week. Dry goods, seasonal overstock, the occasional refrigerated truck for dairy. He had the look of a man who'd seen a lot of loading docks in his life and had stopped being impressed by any of them. You ever go all the way back by aisle 13 on your route? I asked him, half joking, while he waited for Russ to sign off on the delivery. Otis didn't laugh. He set his clipboard down on the dock rail and looked at me for a second like he was deciding something. I don't unload past aisle 10, he said. Not for this store. Not for the 2 other Cartwells on my route either, and both of those have got a 13 same as this one if you know to look for it. I asked him what he meant, 3 stores having the same thing. I mean, I've been driving for a produce distributor for 6 years, and there's maybe a dozen stores on my regular route, different chains, different states, he said. And every single Superstore built after a certain year's got a section that don't add up right if you actually walk it out with a tape measure. Don't matter what they call it on the floor plan. I don't ask questions about it anymore. I just don't unload past 10, and I make sure I'm off the dock before 3 in the morning, and I've never had a problem in 6 years of doing exactly that. I asked if he'd ever seen anything back there himself. Once, he said, and didn't offer more, and something in the way he picked his clipboard back up told me that was the end of that conversation. He signed off with Russ, backed his truck out, and I didn't see him again for almost 3 weeks. When I did, he nodded at me the way you'd nod at someone you'd survived something with, even though neither one of us had said a single word since. I found out about the guy before me by accident, the same way I found out about a lot of things at Cartwell's. Nobody told me outright, I just noticed the shape of what wasn't being said. There's a locker in the break room, second from the left, that's always locked, and it's the only one that doesn't have a name taped to it. I asked Miguel about it one night while he was on his break, eating a sandwich out of a plastic bag. That's Marcus's locker, he said, like that explained everything. Marcus who? Marcus Aldrich. Guy who had your job before you. He took another bite, chewed for a second. Nobody's cleaned it out. I asked what happened to him. Miguel's face did something I'd start recognizing over the following months. A kind of careful blankness, the expression of someone deciding how much of the truth to hand you. Officially he quit, Miguel said. No notice. Didn't even come in to get his check, and Russ had to mail it to him. That's the official story. And unofficially? Miguel didn't answer that one directly. He just told me his car was still in the employee lot for almost 3 weeks after he quit, parked in the same spot, until it eventually got towed for being abandoned. His locker was never cleaned out because nobody had the heart or the nerve to do it. And his lunch, an actual sack lunch, sandwich and an apple, was still in the break room fridge for a week and a half before somebody finally threw it away because it started to smell. I looked into Marcus a little more after that, In the way you can when you work in a security office with a board curiosity and 6 monitors that also connect, if you know where to look, to old archive footage. I found a few frames of him from before I started. A tall guy, maybe mid-30s, always wore his security badge clipped a little crooked. I never found any footage of the night he disappeared. Whatever happened, it happened in a stretch where the recordings had gaps I couldn't explain. Not just camera 13, but the whole system down for almost 6 hours. His badge was never recovered. I checked the lost and found log going back 2 years. Never turned in, never found on the property, never scanned out at any door. I asked Russ about him directly, finally, on a slow Tuesday when it felt like the right kind of quiet to ask a hard question. Marcus was good at this job, Russ said. He was looking at the inventory sheet in the locked drawer when he said it, not at me. Better than good. He followed the rules for almost 4 years. Longer than anybody before him. What happened? Russ closed the drawer. He got curious about the wrong thing on the wrong night. That's all I know for certain. That's all anybody knows for certain. I want to tell you about the night everything changed, because up until this point, everything I've described, the flickering light, the moved cart, the camera glitch, Marcus's empty locker, all of it could still, if you squinted, be explained away. Old building. Corporate ghost stories to keep new guys in line. Coincidence stacked on coincidence. What happened at 3:17 a.m. on a Thursday in my 9th week could not. I was on my 3 a.m. walk. My last chance to be anywhere near aisle 13 before the rule kicked in and the aisle went off limits for the night. I'd already checked it once, chain hanging, everything normal, and I was heading back toward the front of the store when the overhead lights in the whole back third of the building flickered hard all at once. Not the little stutter I'd seen before. A full brownout, maybe 2 seconds of near darkness, followed by the lights snapping back on brighter than normal, the way lights do right after a power surge. My radio, clipped to my belt, crackled with static. Then the motion alarm for camera 13 went off. Loud, on my radio, the alert tone we get whenever any sensor trips. I froze. Rule 2. Ignore it. I want to be honest, I almost didn't. Every instinct I had from 3 years in the military told me to go investigate, go find the source, don't just stand there. But I thought about Marcus's empty locker, and I thought about the way Russ's voice had gone flat and careful when he told me the rules, and I made myself turn around and walk toward the front registers instead. I got about 20 feet before I looked back just once. I know I shouldn't have, but I looked. The chain across aisle 13 was still hanging, still padlocked exactly as it should be. That's the detail that still bothers me the most. Honestly, the rule wasn't broken. Nothing was on the floor. Everything was technically fine. But past the chain, standing at the far end of the aisle where the Halloween display met the back shelf, there was someone, tall, wearing a Cartwell's employee vest. The same red vest I was wearing, the same one every stalker on the day shift wore. Standing perfectly still, the way nobody actually stands, not shifting their weight, not breathing that I could see from that distance. And where the face should have been, under the fluorescent light that was somehow still dimmer in that aisle than everywhere else, there was just smoothness. Not blank like a mannequin. Smooth like skin pulled tight over nothing, catching the light wrong. It was smiling. I know that doesn't make sense if there wasn't a face to speak of, but there was an impression of a smile, the general shape of one, like something that had learned what a smile was supposed to look like from watching people from very far away and had gotten most of it right. It didn't move. It didn't blink because there was nothing to blink. It just stood there, past the chain, facing me for what felt like a very long time and was probably 4 or 5 seconds. I didn't run. I want to be clear about that because I think the version of this story you're expecting has me sprinting for the exit. I didn't. I just walked, fast, steady, the way you walk when every part of your training is screaming at you not to look like prey. I got to the security office, I locked the door behind me, which I'd never done before, there'd never been a reason to, and I sat there with my hand on my radio until my shift ended at 7. I checked camera 13's footage the next morning before Russ came in. Static for exactly 40 seconds, starting at 3:17 a.m. When the feet came back, the aisle was empty. Chain still hanging. No figure. Nothing on the shelves had moved. I never told Russ what I saw, not at first. I wrote it in the incident book as motion alarm, camera glitch, nothing found on visual inspection. which was true technically as far as the camera was concerned. But I couldn't stop thinking about it, and I think that's exactly why 3 nights later something answered me on the radio. It was almost 4 a.m., past the cutoff, and I was doing paperwork in the security office when my radio crackled to life. Security to aisle 13. Clear as day. A voice, flat, almost bored sounding, the exact tone I use myself when I'm calling in a routine check. The kind of voice that could belong to any overnight employee anywhere in America. There was only one problem. I was holding the radio. It was clipped to my belt and I hadn't touched the transmit button. And there was nobody else working that night. I checked the schedule twice, right there in the office, hands not quite steady. Russ was off. Miguel didn't come in on Thursdays. The overnight stalker had called out sick. It was just me, alone, in an empty building the size of 2 football fields, and something had used my radio's channel to call itself to the one aisle I was under strict instructions to stay away from. I didn't respond. I didn't move for almost a full minute, just sitting there staring at the radio like it might say something else. It didn't. The channel stayed quiet, just the low static hiss it always has. I told Russ about that one. I could not tell him. It felt too big to carry alone, too specific to write off his nerves. He was quiet for a long time after I finished, turning his coffee mug slowly on his desk, and then he told me something he hadn't told me before. It doesn't call itself in, he said. Not usually. Marcus told me it did that to him too near the end. Called itself in on the radio, like it was checking in for a shift. Like it works here, I said, and I don't know why I said it that way, but it felt true the second it left my mouth. Russ didn't correct me. Not everybody at Cartwell's is wrapped up in this. I want to say that clearly because it would be easy to make this whole place sound like it's rotten all the way through, and it isn't. Most of the people I work with are just people doing a job, tired and underpaid and decent about it. Fern Whitcomb runs the overnight bakery restock, 3 mornings a week, coming in around 5 a.m. to get the bread and pastry case ready before the day shift opens the doors. She's maybe 60, silver hair always in the same low bun, and she hums old country songs under her breath while she works, off-key in a way that's somehow comforting instead of annoying. She keeps a photo of her grandkids taped inside her locker and brings in extra donuts on Fridays for the boys on the floor, even though I'm the only one usually still there when she arrives. Fern doesn't know about aisle 13, not really. Nobody's told her, and I don't think she needs to know. But she noticed early on that I'd started coming in quieter, more watchful, jumping a little at sounds I wouldn't have jumped at before. She never pried. She just started making sure to say my name clearly when she came in each morning. "Morning, Danny, it's just me," before she got close enough to startle me, like she understood without being told that surprise wasn't something I could afford anymore. She'd worked at that Cartwell's almost as long as Miguel, though her shifts only overlapped with mine 3 mornings a week, right at the tail end, when the sky outside was just starting to go gray over the parking lot. She'd raised 2 kids mostly on that paycheck. She told me once, after her husband's back gave out and he couldn't do warehouse work anymore, and there wasn't a trace of bitterness in the way she said it, just a plain accounting of a life, the way some people can talk about hard years like they're reading off a grocery list. She always brought a thermos of her own coffee, because she said the break room stuff tasted like it had been strained through a shop rag, and she always offered me the first cup before she poured her own. Small thing. But 3 months into working nights with almost no one else around, small things start to matter more than they should. One morning, near the end of my shift, she caught me staring down the main aisle toward the back of the store, toward 13, longer than I should have been. "You don't have to tell me what's back there," she said, setting a tray of cinnamon rolls into the case. "But whatever it is, you don't look like a man who's imagining things. And for what it's worth, my mother used to say some doors get built into a place on purpose. Not to keep something out. To give it somewhere to be so it doesn't go looking for somewhere else." I asked her what she meant by that. She just smiled, small and tired, and went back to her bread. I've thought about what she said more than almost anything else anyone told me during all of this. Because by the time she said it, I'd already started to suspect she was right. There was one more person who mattered to all this, though I didn't understand how much until later. An older woman named Eleanor Voss used to come in almost every week, always around 1 a.m., always alone, buying almost nothing. A loaf of bread, sometimes a carton of eggs, once just a single greeting card from the rack near the registers. She had the kind of careful, upright posture that made her look taller than she was, silver hair pinned back neat even at that hour, and she moved through the store slower than anyone else I ever saw shop there, like she wasn't in a hurry to leave. I clocked her the first few times just because it was unusual. Nobody shops for one loaf of bread at 1 in the morning unless something's keeping them awake that has nothing to do with groceries. The third or fourth time I saw her, I did what I did with most regulars and just said hello, made small talk while she was in line at the self-checkout, which was the only register still lit up that late. She asked me without much preamble how long I'd worked the overnight shift. I told her almost 2 months at that point. She nodded slowly like she was doing some kind of math in her head. My husband worked this shift, she said. Long time ago now. Before this building was even a Cartwell's, if you can believe that. It used to be something else out here before the box stores came through. I asked what had been here before. Nothing with a name I ever knew, she said. Some kind of depot. Grain, I think, or feed storage. My husband never talked about it much, and by the time I thought to ask more, he wasn't in a state to answer clearly anymore. She said that last part simply, without asking for sympathy, the way Fern talked about her husband's back. But I remember him saying there was a door in that old depot nobody was supposed to open. And I remember thinking that was a strange thing for a grown man to be afraid of. I asked her carefully if she still came in this late because of him. She thought about that for a second, tapping one finger against the edge of the checkout screen. I suppose I come in because it's the one place I still feel close to him, she said. Even now. Even with whatever's still back there. She looked toward the rear of the store, toward 13, without a trace of fear on her face. Just a long, tired familiarity, the same look Miguel got when he talked about the parking lot light nobody ever fixed. You be careful with it, young man. It doesn't forget the people who've paid attention to it, good or bad. She paid for her bread, thanked me, and walked out into the dark toward a car I never once saw her actually get into. By the time I glanced back at the parking lot camera in the office minutes later, out of a curiosity I couldn't quite explain to myself, there was no car in that section of the lot at all. I never saw her again after that night. I asked Miguel about her once, casually, and he just shrugged and said he didn't know any Eleanor Voss, though he allowed that a lot of strange regulars came through that store over the years, and he'd stopped keeping track of the ones who eventually stopped coming. I found the notebook by accident, tucked behind a stack of old inventory binders on a shelf in the back office that nobody used anymore. Spiral-bound, water-damaged at the corners, filled with handwriting that started out neat and got progressively more cramped and hurried toward the back half. It was Marcus's. Most of it was mundane. Shift notes, a grocery list on one page, a half-finished letter to someone named Priya that he never seemed to finish. But about 2/3 of the way through, the entries changed. Shorter. More clipped. Dated, some of them, though the dates jumped around like he wasn't always writing in order. Chain was on the floor tonight. First time. Didn't run. Should have run. It knows my name now. Doesn't say it. Just, I can tell it knows. Asked me where the bathroom was. I almost answered. Russ says don't answer. I understand why now. Found the old logs. This has been going on since before the store opened. Before Cartwell's even. There was something else here first. That last entry stopped me cold because it lined up with something I'd started noticing myself. The building's foundation in the loading dock area has an older section of concrete, discolored differently from the rest, like it had been poured decades before the store itself went up. I'd always assumed it was just an older utility pad. Reading Marcus's notebook, I wasn't so sure anymore. The final entry was the shortest. Chains on the floor again. 3rd time this month. I'm not putting it back. There was nothing after that. No date on the next page. The rest of the notebook was blank. I brought it to Russ. He read through it slowly at his desk, and when he finished he sat for a long moment with his hand flat on the cover, like he was trying to keep something from getting out. He called me that night, Russ finally said. Told me the chain was down. I told him what I told you, don't put it back, get out, come see me in the morning. Did he? Russ shook his head. He said he was going to check something first. Said he wanted to see how far back the aisle went, because he didn't think it should be as deep as it looked on the floor plan. He was quiet for a second. That was the last time I heard from him. I pushed him after that. I felt like I'd earned it. 3 months in, I'd seen the figure, heard my own radio call itself in, read a dead man's, missing man's. I made myself correct. Last entries. I told Russ I needed the whole truth, not pieces of it doled out like he was protecting me from something. He poured 2 coffees instead of 1, which told me he'd decided to actually answer. Every Cartwell's built after 1994 has an aisle 13, he said. Not every store calls it that on the floor plan, but it's there. Same spot, structurally, in every one. Corporate knows. It's in a supplement to the facilities manual that doesn't get handed out to just anybody. I only saw it because I've been a store manager long enough to earn the clearance. What is it? I asked. What's actually back there? I don't fully know, he said, and I believed him because his voice had the particular honesty of a man who'd stopped pretending to have answers he didn't have. What I know is this. Before this land was a parking lot, before it was a Cartwell's, it was something else. There's a reason the concrete's different back by the dock. Somebody built something here a long time before this company did, and when they built the store, whatever's under it didn't go away. It just got a new door. So the aisle's not keeping customers out, I said, understanding it as I said it. It's not even really about us. It's a door, Russ said. The chain doesn't keep it in. The chain tells us if it's decided to come out. That's the whole system. That's all we've ever been able to do, watch the door and know when it's open. And the missing items? The inventory? Russ's jaw tightened. I think it's part of an arrangement, he said carefully, like he'd never said the words out loud before. One thing a night. Small. In exchange, it stays back there instead of coming further into the store. I don't know who set that arrangement up or when. I just know it's held mostly for longer than I've worked here. And I know that when a guard breaks the rules, crosses the chain, answers the wrong question, goes looking too hard for what's underneath, the arrangement changes. It gets a person instead of an item. I sat with that for a long time. The bakery smell was starting to drift in from Fern's shift, warm bread cutting through the fluorescent stillness of the office. And I remember thinking how strange it was to be having this conversation while somewhere nearby someone was icing donuts. What happened to Marcus? I finally asked. Russ looked at me, and for the first time since I'd known him, he looked old, not just tired. I think he found the door underneath the door, he said. I think he went looking for how far back the aisle really goes, and I think he found out. And I don't think whatever's back there needed him to break the chain rule after that, because he'd already broken the bigger one. He went looking for the truth. That's the one rule nobody ever writes down because you'd think it was obvious. It happened on a Tuesday almost 4 months into the job, and it happened exactly the way I'd been trained to expect, which somehow made it worse, like watching a scripted ending play out in real time, knowing every beat before it landed. 2:52 a.m. My hourly walk. I came around the toy aisle toward the back, and the overhead light above 13 was doing its usual dim flicker, and I looked down the aisle out of habit, the same look I'd done 100 times before. The chain was on the floor. Not dropped carelessly, coiled almost neatly like someone had unhooked it from both padlocks and set it down with some care. The aisle beyond it was dark in a way I hadn't seen before, darker than the usual dimness, like the shelves themselves were further back than they should have been. The whole aisle stretched longer than 24 feet of retail floor space had any right to be. I did not go in. I want you to understand that clearly because I think about Marcus every day, and I think about what separated me from him in that moment, and I don't think it was courage. I think it was luck, and I think it was Fern's voice in my head saying, some doors get built on purpose, and I think it was 3 years of training that had taught my body to move before my curiosity could catch up. I turned around. I walked fast back toward the front of the store, and I did not look back this time. I didn't stop until I was in the security office with the door locked and my radio in my hand, and I called Russ at home even though it was almost 3 a.m., and I told him the chain was down. Don't go back, he said, his voice thick with sleep and fear in equal measure. Stay where you are until 7. Don't check the cameras. Don't look at camera 13. Just wait. I waited. 5 hours felt like 50. I sat in that little windowless room with the 6 monitors showing every part of the store except the one I couldn't stop thinking about, and I listened to the building hum around me, and somewhere around 4 a.m. I heard, faint from somewhere deep in the store, a sound like a shopping cart wheel squeaking slowly across tile. It went on for almost a minute, then it stopped. Russ came in early, before 6, still in the clothes he'd probably slept in. We walked to aisle 13 together, both of us slower than we needed to be, and when we got there, the chain was hanging again. Padlocked. 6 inches off the floor. Exactly as it should be. Nothing on the shelves had moved that I could see. The morning inventory that day showed the usual one item missing. A single bag of Halloween candy corn, nothing more. Russ looked at me for a long moment in the aisle, the fluorescent light doing its faint, wrong dimness above us. "You didn't cross it," he said. It wasn't quite a question. "No," I said. "You didn't go looking for anything." "No." He nodded slowly, like he needed to hear it twice to believe it, and we walked back to his office together. He didn't say anything else about it that morning, but something in the set of his shoulders had eased just slightly, in a way that told me he'd been more afraid than he'd let on. That should have been the end of it, at least for that stretch. And for a few weeks it was. The chain stayed hanging. The camera glitched on schedule, the inventory kept its quiet monthly rhythm, and I went back to the routine of my job. Floor walks, coffee, Fern's Friday donuts, the ordinary hum of an ordinary store at 3 in the morning. Then, about a week ago, Russ called me into his office before my shift and slid a printed schedule across the desk without saying anything. I looked at it. Next week's overnight security shifts, same format as always, day, date, name. I scanned down to my usual slots. My name wasn't there. I checked it twice, thinking it was a mistake, a scheduling software glitch, something ordinary. It wasn't. In every slot where my name should have been, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday, there was a different name typed in, the same name over and over. I looked up at Russ. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at the schedule too, like he was hoping it might change if he looked at it long enough. "I didn't put that in," he said quietly. "I checked the system logs. Nobody logged in and made that change. It just updated itself sometime overnight." "What does it mean?" I asked, even though some part of me already understood. Russ took a long time to answer. When he finally did, his voice had that same flat, careful honesty it had the day he told me about the door underneath the door. "I think it means the arrangement's still holding," he said. "I think it means whatever's back there hasn't forgotten Marcus, even if the rest of us have had to move on without him. And I think it means it's letting us know that it remembers exactly who it's owed, and exactly who's kept their end of the deal so far." I asked him if that meant I was safe. He didn't answer that one directly, and I've come to understand that not answering directly is, in this place, its own kind of answer. I still work at Cartwell's. I still do my hourly walks, still check the chain, still nod to Fern when she brings in Friday donuts. The schedule's been fixed since then. My name's back where it should be, Marcus Aldrich's name gone again like it was never there at all. Russ never explained how it changed back, and I never asked. But I keep the notebook. Marcus's notebook, the one I found behind the inventory binders. I read it sometimes on my breaks, in the quiet hum of the security office, trying to find something between the lines that might tell me exactly where the line is. The one Marcus crossed that I haven't, the one that separates a person who watches the door from a person the door decides to keep. I still don't know what's underneath aisle 13. I don't know how old it is, or what the arrangement really costs the people who've kept it running for longer than any of us have been alive. I don't know why it chose a radio call, of all things, to check itself in like an employee clocking on shift, or why it wants a name on a schedule instead of just taking what it's owed outright. What I do know is this. A few nights ago, doing my 3 a.m. walk, I passed aisle 13 the way I always do, and the chain was hanging exactly where it should be. But for just a second, in that dimmer light that never quite matches the rest of the store, I thought I saw the shape of a shopping cart at the far end of the aisle, crooked against the shelf. And past it, so faint I told myself I imagined it, something that might have been the shape of a person standing very still, wearing a red vest. I didn't stop walking. I didn't look twice. But I've started wondering whether the reason the chains never come down on any of my recent shifts isn't because things have settled. I've started wondering if it's just waiting for me to ask it where the bathroom is.